afternoon, everybody. This is Francesco Abbruzzino, and I am here with Stefan. And Stefan, well, how do you pronounce your last name? That one was a tricky one for me.
It's Verstappen.
Verstappen, okay. And he's the author of The Art of Urban Survival, amongst many books. We're going to focus primarily on that today. We pass it over to you. Why don't you tell a bit about the book and why you think it would be a great book for a lot of my listeners out there to read?
Well, the Art of Urban Survival, I wrote that as a survival manual. For me, I envisioned having, every family should have 3 books in the house. One is a book on first aid. Another book is on, you should also have a book on wilderness survival. And then the third book you should have is on urban survival. And the Art of Urban Survival kind of arose out of years and years of teaching, self-defense classes. I, among other things, I was also a martial arts instructor for many years and taught a lot of the women's self-defense type courses. And so that was okay, and I always recommend that everybody should take a self-defense course, take and refresh it every year, just like you would a first aid certificate. The only problem, though, was, I've been around the block a few times. I've traveled the world. I've lived in Asia, and I also grew up in a bad part of town here in Toronto. And one thing that I couldn't teach in a self-defense class was street smarts. And if you have awareness, and if you're aware of how things work, then you don't ever have to find yourself in a situation where you're fighting somebody off. For example, I used to tell my students that if you find yourself in a back alley having to fight off 6 attackers, well, you've done 3 things wrong. First of all, you didn't see the situation unfolding or developing. You weren't able to avoid the situation, and third, you didn't escape the situation. For me, violence has always been, the last resort, and, even after 30 years of martial arts training, I've never had to use it. I've never hit anybody. And the reason for that is because, first of all, I can spot trouble. And I'm street smart, so I know how to avoid it and evade trouble. And third of all, if that fails, I'm pretty good at running my mouth. I can talk my way out of a situation, for example, I remember the last time I almost got into a bar fight was in a bar in Taipei, and some guy came up to me and he said, you're talking to my girlfriend. It wasn't his girlfriend, whatever, I think we should step outside, So I said to him, first of all, I'm like a 8th degree black belt. I've been studying it for years. I lived in China for 4 years studying Kung Fu. I'm, 6'1", 220 pounds. This guy was 5'5", So, and I thought, well, pretty ballsy of him to pick on this big guy and to tell me to step outside. But, so what I'm going to do, step outside, wipe the... What would that accomplish? What am I gaining from that? So what I told him, I said was, I'm really sorry. Let's talk to the girl. Does she want to, have a drink with you or have a drink with me? She said she wanted to have a drink with me. And I said, well, there you go. So tell you what, let me buy you a beer and we'll call it even. And so I bought him a beer and then I walked out of the place. So what am I going to do? Am I going to fight with the guy? Of course not. So, I always teach people, use your brains, because violence, it's violent, and it's only as a last result. However, when you have a 1-hour class and everybody's in there, and they want to learn the elbows and the kicks and things like that, and I don't have time to sit down and describe how the world works, because that would be more of a lecture. So I started putting together handouts for the people, things you should know about anger, how to tell if somebody's drunk, how to tell if somebody's about to throw a sucker punch, because that's the most dangerous thing. Somebody punches you out of the blue, you didn't see it coming. Right. So I started handing out sheets, I want you to be street smart. I want you to be able to spot this type of stuff before it happens. So it kind of evolved from there. So and also a lot of my students were, young men, 19, 20, college age, senior high school. And at that age, people are very naive. And, and most of the trouble they got into was because they were naive. So I tried to, put that material in there to keep them safe. So in examining, I said, well, listen, I got all these pages. I might as well write it up into a book. And I want it to be the ultimate book on how to survive in an urban environment. Now, 90% of us live in an urban environment. So what are the threats that you would face in an urban environment? Well, I decided, or I found out that there were three basic categories of threats. The first threat is from predators. So if you're in the jungle, if you're out in the savannah, the predators are the lions and the hyenas and jackals and so on. But in human society, we are no longer being eaten by mountain lions, except occasionally in California. Where I used to live for the last 15 years, I actually came close to a couple of mountain lions when I was mountain biking through the mountains there. So, but other than that, we don't have predators. Or do we? Mother Nature is not thwarted. So there's a predator-to-prey ratio among all species. And even though there are no predators that seem to, eat human beings anymore, in fact, there are predators. And the predators are ourselves. There are members within our own society. And it's the criminals and the rapists and the robbers. And they fulfill the function of predators in our society. So the first chapter is all about how to deal with predators, stalkers, psychopaths, sociopaths, robbers, kidnappers, carjackers, street gangs.
Let me ask you this. I just did a rogue rant. I do a daily rogue rant, and it was on human trafficking, which is a huge concern of mine. And we just went over this whole nationwide operation. There were 3 arrests here locally. How would your book help a typical 14, 15-year-old girl, which is the age, or even a male, defend against that type of predator?
The chapter on psychopaths would help the most because, there's a certain segment of our population that is completely different from the rest of us. They have a mentality that you and I, unless we read up on it or were exposed to it and had intimate knowledge of it, we would never believe that type of thing exists. For example, you wouldn't believe that in this modern age, slavery exists. But as you know, it does. And it's widespread. And, so for a 14-year-old, they get suckered in by the typical type of lures that all psychopaths use. They're charming. They're often very good looking. They can be witty and funny. I've met a few psychopaths that I thought were great guys and great women. It seems to be equally distributed, so don't be fooled just because it's a woman. But if you're aware of their tactics, you are better able to defend yourself because, as you know, they don't just jump out of a car and kidnap you and throw you into slavery. What they do is they lure you in, they sucker you in through, trying to be your friend first and gaining your trust. And once they've gained your trust, they'll set up a situation where you'll be eventually separated from the rest of your family and friends, and off you go. And that's the last often, people will see from you. So that's why the first chapter in the book is on psychopaths, because they're the most dangerous and they are the most prevalent predator in our society.
Now, I did notice, and I hate to interrupt you right there.
Right ahead.
Now that you're mentioning that first chapter about the psychopaths, and for the listening audience out there, you do have it says a free download for that excerpt in there covering defense against the psychopath, right? So they can go to your site and download that and get a taste for what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can it's available as a PDF, so you can print it out if you like. I formatted it so that you can print it out on your computer at home if you want, or you can just read it online. It's 30 pages with references and so on, and I made that available for free because to me that's the most important part of the book. It really is, because once you understand the mentality of these people, you are better able to defend yourself against it. Because again, they're not going to jump out of a dark alley and attack you. That's a different type of predator, and oftentimes that's not a psychopath. It's usually somebody who's desperate and poor, and a lot of these crimes are motivated by poverty and need. I'm not too hard on those guys. You shouldn't do that, and they should be punished, but they're acting in a criminal way out of necessity and survival. It's called the cheating strategy, and if you're desperate, we will all resort to cheating to survive, and so will other animals. But the psychopath, that's something different. That's a really malevolent type of mentality, and the way they get you is they charm you and they sucker you in. And so the sooner you can learn about that, the safer you'll be. You'll be safe from, you'll be able to defend against not only, slavers, but against con artists and what we used to call, when I was a kid, before we had a name for these type of people, we used to call them psychic vampires. People that just suck the life out of you and use you, and they need more money, they need more attention, they need more things. Anyways, those all belong to this, type of person that we, now call psychopaths. So if you can become aware of them, you've already prevented 80% of this bad stuff that's going to happen to you.
Now, now the rest of your book, you cover the first chapter is the psychopath and how to help defend yourself. What can they expect to get from the rest of the book?
So we go on to what are the threats in our society that we all would face. So the second threat then is the same threat as all animals face in the wilderness, and that is natural disasters. So the entire second chapter deals with natural disasters, and it's, all the information in the book is very concise. They're short chapters, and it's written like a manual. There's no eyes, there's no first person in the book anywhere. So, I'm not relating stories of, how I killed a goat in the woods or anything like that, or how I caught rats and how good they tasted, which is a lot of the survival books. I'm quite surprised to go on into details like that. I don't really want to know that. So what I did was just provide you very simple information to help you survive the first 3 days. That was my intention, because to survive, weeks and months, well, you need a university course in that type of skills. You can, to really learn all the facets of surviving all possibilities, there's hundreds of books that you could read on that. So I wanted to provide you with just the information that you need to survive the first 3 days. And the reason for that is, when I was researching this, I read lots of, survival stories and stories of people that, had to undergo extreme circumstances. And you often find that within the first couple of hours, they will make a stupid mistake. And I mean, just a dumb mistake. And that dumb mistake sets them on a course to tragedy for the rest of, they survived at the end, because that's why they're a survival story.
And I could see a natural disaster. I could see people making stupid mistakes left and right, because you don't know what to do.
Exactly, and so if you make that mistake in the beginning, it might be too late, because, if that mistake is serious enough, it sets you on a course that you can't get out of. So the information in the book is concise, it's short, right to the point. This is what you need to know. And I also, I'm kind of scholarly, so everything I say in the book all has references and footnotes and endnotes. So if you do want to, go, well, I want some more information on that, you can go to the index or to the references, and you can read up on more of each subject if you like. But the information I give you is to prevent people, the average person that doesn't really know a lot about all of this, and so they can pick it up, read it, say, okay, let's not make this mistake. And if I don't make these 2 or 3 stupid mistakes in the beginning, my chances of surviving have improved, 400%.
Well, let me ask you this on the next one I'm reading here. It says, how to tell if someone is lying. Now, can you give us a little taste of what we can expect there? Will we really be able to tell if someone's lying if we read the book?
No. Yes. Again, it's part of the, urban survival, because, in our interactions with people, if we can be a little bit shrewd about, when somebody's being truthful to us, we can save ourselves a lot of trouble. I mean, you and I both know, like, if we could be able to spot a lie the minute we heard it every single time, you and my life would be a lot, right? So, but it's in there, not because you're able to tell if a person is lying, but you're able to get an idea. So the first part of how to physical twin, but the caveat that I, tell my readers at the very beginning of the chapter on how to tell if someone is lying is that even lie detectors are not accurate. For example, a psychopath can pass a lie detector test, and the reason is that a lie detector picks up emotional cues in a person. For example, all a lie detector is a galvanic skin response meter, a meter that measures respiration and blood pressure. And the theory is that when you lie, you will get nervous, and when you get nervous, your heart rate increases, you'll start to sweat more, which increases the GSR reading, and your blood pressure will go up. Well, that's if you have a conscience. If I were to tell a bold-faced lie, yeah, I'm a terrible liar, I'll start to sweat, I'll get nervous. That's why I don't lie, because I can't get away with it anyway. So I long ago stopped trying to lie.
My wife and daughter say my lower lip pokes out, and they can always tell when I'm lying.
There you go. They can tell on us. So I'm a terrible liar, you're a terrible liar. That's because we're probably, decent people, and we have a conscience, so we can't get away with it. Psychopaths have no conscience, so there is nothing that they're nervous about. They lie constantly about everything. Now, so even though it would be impossible or nearly impossible to tell if a psychopath is lying to you, everyone else, even non-psychopaths, will lie to you on a... And then those physical cues, the body language, may give you a cue that they're lying to you about something. But in addition to that, in the chapter, I also talk about the timeline and the logic and the what we... I don't use the word higher criticism, but it's what I'm referring to. Higher criticism is where you analyze a story based on the cohesiveness of the logic within the story. For example, I said, if I were to lie to you and said, well, it took me 10 minutes to drive home from Barrie. Well, no, Barrie is 40 miles away. It takes you an hour to drive home from Barrie. So my story of driving home from Barrie in 10 minutes is illogical in its own context. So there's other things that you can look for to tell if somebody's lying, not just the body language, but also look for the inconsistencies in the logic. Also look for inconsistencies in the timeline. And again, this is part of being, kind of street smart. And once you're able to have a sense, it's not infallible, but what it can do is warn you. Let's say you're talking to someone and you're picking up clues. Maybe they have some physical clues. You notice that maybe they're nervous or maybe they're lying. You can't tell. A lot of people are just nervous because they're talking to you in the first place. But then you notice also, in addition to the physical clues, you notice that, the storyline doesn't seem to add up. There's something missing that doesn't seem to add up. Well, that's all you need, okay? You've got a clue now. You've got a warning. So what are you going to do? You're not going to say, oh, I know you're lying, because you don't. But you're going to be a little bit more careful. So now, what's the punchline? Do I need to send you a check? Do I have to lend you some money now at this point? Do I have to, join you in the back seat of the car? At that point, because you've got those, red flags, you should now modify your behavior to make yourself less vulnerable.
Okay.
And that's all it is, So is it a science? No. But with practice, you can start to get a feeling. And even if you're wrong, let's say you thought the person was lying and you're wrong afterwards, your behavior is only defensive. You're not going to be attacking people. I'm not going to be going out and accusing them in public of something, but I'm going to be more careful with myself and not allow myself to be put into a situation where I might be exploited.
Right, got you. Now, this book's had some great reviews. This is Donna Morris. The book is excellent. After reading the descriptions and techniques to defend oneself, I was compelled to make copies and give it to my family members. She highly recommends it. So, sounds like a great book. And not only that book, you've written several books which they can read about or look up on your site, which is, if you want to give that site name down, I do have it on our tagline on the bottom, but if you want to give out information like your site, which books they may be interested, some other books you might have, your Twitter, your Facebook, any good information to get in touch with you.
Sure. My website is chinastrategies.com. That's one word, China Strategies. I also have a more recent website that I put up, and it just focuses on the art of urban survival. But my other books are on there too, and that's called urbansurvivalstrategies.com. Facebook, just use my name, Stefan Verstappen, and I respond to all requests. And I'm not on Twitter.
You're not a tweet. What do they call them? Tweeps.
Tweeters, I don't know. I just never got into Twitter, but Facebook, LinkedIn, just under my name. But I never use LinkedIn. I use Facebook once in a while, and but that's it. You can find my email address if you want to write to me. If you have questions, I always respond to all my readers with questions, and so I'm quite available for that. Absolutely.
All right, and Stefan's got some interesting material on there. I encourage everyone to go to the website. When I post this out there, I will have a link to his website, probably to his Facebook, and then I'm going to have this video recording, which most of you are watching right now during the live show, but I'm going to post it separately under my interview section on the webpage. So, Stefan, if you could hold on for a second, I'm going to cut back to you after we cut out. All right, thanks a lot. This is great talking to you.